Welcome to the Carl O'Connor podcast with myself, Carl O'Connor, and my co host, Craig Lynch. Thank you for listening, and please keep your eyes out for further podcasts. Enjoy. Welcome to podcast number 2 of the Carl O'Connor podcast with Craig Lynch, aka Crouchy. Crouch, how's things? How have you been since we last spoke? We had a bit of snow, Valentine's Day. How did you get on in the north of the country?
And another Liverpool loss. Driving me mental. I think that's worse. I think that's punishing me worse than the actual lockdown is how Liverpool are performing.
What about locked up? Were you snowed in for a day?
Actually, a lot of snow. But it was literally a 24-hour time. We woke up one morning and the place was completely white, a blanket of snow, and then 24 hours later, rain. Everything's completely gone.
What about then? When did you do anything nice on Valentine's Sunday? Was Aisling treated like a princess, Craig?
No, definitely not. I know, like most people that know me at this stage, I'm very stubborn. So I've created this scenario where I basically don't do Valentine's Day. I don't need a particular day of the week or month to do something special. It should be every day of the week, Karen. You know that, man.
Craig, that's beautiful here. I know you're really Casanova. So yeah, this week podcast number 2. We have someone that both of us know to a certain degree on a personal level. Coached me through the Light Academy squads and on minor team, and you've had a lot of dealings with him through your football career as well. Very well renowned coach throughout the country. Currently working with the Meath senior team. We've Colm Nally.
We do, yeah, we do, and it's definitely it's an interesting one for me because I know him in I suppose many different capacities. As I would have played under him when he had my club team back in 2010. He would have coached me then as I was a goalkeeper with the Loud team, and then he moved on to be the selector and overall trainer of the Loud team. So I would have seen him a lot there, and then obviously he's heavily involved in the Newtown Blues, who would have been a rival of ours for a number of years, and then on top of that, I know him personally as well. So I've a good relationship with Colin, but like even talking to him during the podcast, it's almost like that teacher student scenario where you're not at not fearful of talking to him, but it's almost that figure of authority. Or if you go back and you chat to a teacher of yours from years ago, you still have it. Do you call him sir? Do you call him whatever? So I still have that kind of relationship with him. But no, it's great to have a chat with Colin because he's been around the GEA for so many years. So it's great to have him on board.
Yeah, for sure, and hopefully any of the coaches listening throughout the country maybe, and even coaches who are outside of Ireland that I see. We had a few people watching last week from England, Bulgaria, Russia, America, Australia. We had a wee bit international and on the first episode. So hopefully we people listening from all those places again, and obviously all around the country that listening to Colm's insights and experiences, that hopefully they're able to pick something up from a conversation. So shall we get started?
Yeah, let's get him in.
Colm, Nally, thank you very much for coming on. How are you?
I'm all good, Carl, and thanks a million for the invite.
Um, Hopefully this is a very anticipated episode 2, and you've a very good following on social media, and the content you're putting out there is greatly appreciated from a lot of coaches around the country, including myself and Craig. Are very lucky to have you on. So again, have you been without football? Have you been during the lockdown?
Yeah, it's unusual, and like everybody, I was kind of under the impression that we'd be gearing up to getting some sort of, game time back on the pitch in the next few weeks. So I mean, with the announcement recently, it was kind of like a jolt out of the blue, and it was very unexpected. And I know, like, I mean, I was talking to Andy, the Mead manager there the other day, and I was saying, Andy, like, were we the naive ones to expect we were back? And then when we were chatting, we realised no, every county was kind of gearing up to get back. So somebody missed some bit of information along the way. You know, it wasn't just us that kind of thought we'd be back. Everybody thought they'd be back soon.
Okay. I'll just add to that, Colin, that you brought it up, and obviously before Christmas we were, when I say we, I'm talking about the GA. We were classed as elite sports people. Is that something that kind of has you baffled, that suddenly, September, October, that period of time, we were classed as elite footballers in regards to the county setups of each county, and now suddenly we're not. Is that something that's baffling to you, or?
Well, like the term elite, never sat easy with me. But I can understand the sort of the confusion, and I can understand from the government's point of view that they did make a statement saying that it was a dispensation to allow GA go ahead. So I mean, apparently that was made clear, but it didn't filter down to us that this was only a dispensation. Like, I mean, I'm sure you're the same, Craig. Like, I mean, we just presumed, like, if we were allowed to compete before Christmas, that there was no reason why we wouldn't be allowed to compete after Christmas in level 5. But as I said, the term elite and that type of terminology doesn't really sit with me. Like, we're still kind of just amateur footballers, and we're just, majority of people that are involved in the county, believe it or not, are still there because of a hobby more than anything else. It's just that there's a lot more focus on it. But don't like them sort of terms, elite, because at the end of the day, we're just kind of club footballers and club coaches that have been lucky enough to be asked to coach at county level and whatever. But yeah, to answer your question, I found it strange that before Christmas we were allowed to compete, after Christmas we weren't. But so be it.
Yeah, and look, I suppose, Colin, that we're on that kind of we're on the topic of inter-county now, and your current role as the senior coach of Meath GAA. What has it been like trying to coach in a lockdown? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a club coach. We have Craig who works with goalkeepers all around the county and even in the province. How have you found that, and how have you adapted to trying to coach during a lockdown?
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, during the first couple of lockdowns, like, we learned on the go, and we all kind of polished up our presenting skills and things like that. So, moving on from that, what we did this year so far was, we had a couple of meets after the Leinster final. A couple of chats, a couple of get together, then a couple of management meetings where we were kind of having a look and a review of our system and a review of our year to date. So, it gave us a chance to kind of review a lot of the videos of our games in the championship and the leagues, and try to coach via videos of what we'd like to do next year. What I'd always do with the players is, like, some of the videos that I just do on my own, I give them a few ideas of ball skills to work on. Like, I mean, I think it's brilliant, and I think all the county players up down the country have been very dedicated in following their running programs and conditioning programs. But I've been giving them kind of specific skills to work on. So what I would do now, again, with the help of my own lads there, we do a few videos, and we send them, and they're just kind of ideas to give fellas. Because if a lad goes down the football field or to the public park, he'll spend ages standing in front of the bar just kicking the ball over the bar. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give them kind of stuff that they can add to their game, like blended learning, we call it. So if we can get them to kind of pick up new skills or fine tune some new skills that can be blended into our training when we come back. For instance, I was trying to get one of the most, I think, important skills in the game today now is that 30-meter foot pass. Right, it's a game changer, and if you look at a lot of the games towards the end of last year, there was an awful lot of 30-meter dink passes or sympathetic passes into space, passes into players running onto that they can control out in front of them, that they could turn left and right. So I've been given, specific kicking plans to certain players. Like, some players like the punt kick it, others like the hook kick it. So what we're trying to find out off the players is what's your favorite kick, and see can we get that really up to speed off both feet. So we're giving them a few ideas like that to work on, that they can, when they're doing their running programs, they can spend 10 or 15 minutes kicking 20 or 30 balls like that. So we've given them specific targets and aims for things like that. And look, I think they enjoy that. I think they pick something up from it, and it's something that they can kind of get value out of their individual training sessions.
Yeah, no, that's I said, listening to that is kind of music to my ears. To be fair, and I'm sure Craig will agree that you know even as a club coach or a club manager out there of underage players or adult footballers that people think it's running program fitness all the time, and especially during this lockdown, which is tough for the club player. Don't get me wrong, and I definitely appreciate the tough work that some of them are putting in, and I'm sorry, a lot of them are putting in, and it's hard to keep themselves motivated. I think might be slightly different in regards to county football, but there's club footballers running the roads, day in day out all over the country, and I think it's refreshing to hear that it's someone like yourself is given um, you know, a specific kicking program or specific skills program to some of your footballers, and I think that's something that people forget about. During these tough times, that at the end of the day, it's about the football and not about how many kilometers you can run or how quick you can do X or how quick you can do Y, and no, that's a great insight. We kind of started on fire there with the podcast, which is great.
But I think, like, again, like, I mean, like, I love playing, and I always wanted to try to see where I could improve. And sometimes, like, there's a massive difference between simple and easy. So what I'm after explaining there sounds very simple, but and it is, right. But then to make that easy into a game means that you have to master the skill, right? So again, what we need to do is go through the various stages of coaching. So again, they'd be doing that in an environment where they're unchallenged, right? They might be slightly fatigued from doing running and things like that. But if they can master it that way, then it's up to us when we get them back that we can put different sort of pressures on it, like time and space restraints and people hanging out of you and stuff like that. But again, if they master it first, the first couple of steps of it, and something, like, all the top players will always tell you that it's the basics done well that makes the difference between them when they're executing skills. So it's just an opportunity where players might have a chance to fine tune bilateral hand pass and all that sort of stuff. Things that you can kind of do on your own or with a partner or brother or sister or even a parent. That's what I'd be trying to do. Like, I mean, I've been watching up and down the country of all the yourselves, GPOs and GDAs, and the work that we've done is fantastic. And the engagement with all the people, it's a brilliant, and it's a credit. And it brings back to the point that we're a community-based organization, right? And you're making all these kids feel part of something. I mean, we're very, very fortunate to have you doing that work. But again, I feel sometimes that the older players forgotten about then. Do you know what I mean? Like the guy that's 17 or 18 club player, or even county player, county minors, they're forgot about. Like, everyone perceives that actually they know what to do, but sometimes they don't. Like, they just need a little nudge or a little bit. Do you know what it is? I find you put an idea into their head and they progress it. They say, "Oh, I know what you mean, but I'm going to do it this way." And that's brilliant. Like, once getting kind of the bones of something that they can get their teeth into.
Yeah, no, exactly, and like I said, Colin, that insight, I suppose, of the first few minutes of this conversation, or the first 10 minutes of this conversation, is 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 the kind of stuff we wanted to dive into, and see your insights on, and a coach at your level. I suppose we wanted to see where you're at with that, and we definitely did start. Started very fast and great there in the podcast. So I'm gonna slow it down a small bit.
Yeah, no
and we'll definitely get back right into it. But
Just on that point, Colm made there about the content he's putting out with the lads on Instagram. Like, it was just making me think, because yesterday I went down to the local park that's beside me here. I think it was about 3 o'clock yesterday evening, and I had what did I have, 20, 100 meter runs to do. And from when I started to when I finished, I hated every second of it. But I'm looking across, and at the top end of the pitch, there's two parents, right, with loads of cones split up for, I think it was about 4 kids. They must have been their own kids, and they were like basically running around the cones and kicking the ball and all that sort of stuff. At the other end, it was looked to be like about three minor footballers out kicking ball over the bar, simple freeze, and then over in the soccer pitch, there was lads doing dribbling in and out of cones. You know, like where Amnesia that's doing the hard running, where the content the Colm was putting out is the stuff they actually want to do, and they're doing it voluntarily. You know, they're out there just practicing their skills. You know, and just when he said that, I was going like, that is exactly the content people need to see and want to see. You know.
Well, I look, as I said to you, like I've changed. I know Carol wants to kind of move, like, but I've changed from my sort of my view. Like I'm kind of, I love the player centered approach now, right? And like I love now kind of players coming and saying, can we do this? I want to do this. I want to get better at that. And then I love trying to come up with ideas to help them. Now the way you come up with them ideas is basically, they nearly come up with them. Right, you're just kind of facilitator, so you're throwing a few ideas at them and things like that, and we're trying to just create any sort of something that might resemble a skill in the game that to kind of make them better. Like as you say, Greg, like I believe, well, from my own experience, listening to the people I know, very very dedicated players, from Loud, Mead, and Dublin, that who kind of really following the program and getting the work done, you know. But I'd be always kind of just mindful. I'd be that little sort of, how would you devil on your shoulder saying, don't forget your skills, don't forget your skills, you know, that sort of stuff. And that's all I try to do with the likes of that, you know.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm going to reiterate, Colin, that hopefully people and coaches who might listen to this podcast will be refreshed and kind of maybe ideas, and mentality might change with some of the things you're after saying in regards to the skills and it's not all about the running the whole time during this lockdown and again if it might be a snap shout by the GA that suddenly right guys, restrictions are lifted on X date, your first game is 2 or 3 weeks away, like, so if we continue to not um you know tidy up our skills and keep ourselves taken over, going to be a lot of very rusty footballers in playing championship football, club football during the summer. So I suppose I can't reiterate enough that definitely we cannot forget the skills of the game during this time and not worry about just our running. So look, Colin, like I said, it's not that I wanted to get away from it, but
Yeah,
I think when people talk about Colin Nally, people talk about Colin Nally, this innovative author. I can throw it out there. I thought we have 2 books, so author you can throw it out there and like I said, innovative coach out there who likes to share his content with like not a lot of Gaelic football coaches or even GA coaches like to share their content, and it's some sort of big secret, and nobody kind of seems to want to help someone else who might be in a position to. But it's fantastic to see that you share a lot of your content on social media, and coaches love it. Coaches love it. So I want to know where this person came from. I want to know about the Colin Nally before the books, before the coaching, before the football, or county football as a player started. So, Colin, you born in Balbriggan, or grew up in Balbriggan, played with Irish Balbriggan as your first club.
yeah.
So what I want to know, and I'm sure Crouchy looked a wee bit eager there. What was growing up playing with the Irish, or what was playing Gaelic football in your house like as a young person?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so I was actually born in the Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda, but as everybody in Balbriggan was, and I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and my two older brothers were involved in O'Dwyer's, and Ronan in particular was a star in the making. He was a star underage for Dublin. At that stage, one of the big competitions, believe it or not, was an under 14 county competition. And he scored 2-6 in the Leinster final. Croke Park won at the Leinster final with under 14 and was destined to be big things. But he was also a gifted soccer player who had tried at Chelsea, and he was a gifted musician, and he wanted to go down that route. So, I mean, I was always kind of looking up to him first, and my older brother Paul, but Ronan in particular. But he was kind of involved in a lot of them things, and that sort of taught me an early lesson that you know, it's very hard to please everything, right? So I mean, he was going off to play soccer, right? He was trying to get trials. As I said, he was offered trials with Chelsea. He was kind of singing in a band and playing guitar, right? He was wanted to play for Dublin, you know, and as a result, that was the downfall of him, was because he was kind of serving too many masters. But that was I followed him down to O'Dwyer's then, and at that stage, O'Dwyer's had fellas like Georgie Wilson and Stephen Rooney who won All Ireland medals in the 70s with Dublin. You had Paul O'Carroll who'd won an All Ireland minor medal with Dublin, and then of course you had John O'Leary who was coming through the ranks. So we had great idols there, kind of. But Brigham was kind of hive of. It was deemed country Dublin. So I mean, I laugh now when you used to hear teams from Ballymun coming out to play Brigham. They used to think Woodward was in the country, you know, and there was an awful lot. We were considered kind of coaches, but great times there. When I started playing, I made my debut with O'Dwyer's at 16. And when I look back on it, I wasn't able for it. I was in goals at 16. I played senior Dublin championship football at 16 years of age. John played outfield. He played midfield. And we used to play against the likes of Barney Rock and Charlie Redmond and Keith Barr and all them players. And it was tremendous schooling. I made a few Dublin minor panels and 21 panels. I was sub-keeper for them. I never really got in. And then I got a few trials with Dublin seniors. Played a Bourne Cup matches and things like that. But it was very unusual. You were never going. John was always going to be the keeper. It was very hard. You were never going to have two keepers from one club playing, you know, competing for the Dublin senior jersey. But I always had tremendous respect for John O'Leary because there was a time there where there was a controversial goal given against him in the Leinster final. I think it was early 90s, and he became under pressure for his position. And everybody was kind of giving out saying that he never played goals for his club and that he needs to go back playing goals for his club, you know. And he could have anytime he wanted to say, I want to play goals, but he never did. He used to always say, that's your position, Colm, it's not mine, you know. And like I'd always remember the likes of that. But had great times playing against them players, and you know, look back, they all played league then. Like I mean, championship was a knockout, so I mean, you were beaten, you were gone. But the league and county players all played the league. Like I mean, it was fantastic. Like you were coming against these guys every week. Like you'd see them, you'd be shouting for them on the hill one week, and then the next week you're on the same pitch with them playing against them. You know, so it was tremendous learning then. Like at that time, like everything else, you didn't know you were learning from them. You know, only in hindsight when you look back. Like I remember we played Ballymun in the championship, and we conceded a penalty. And John O'Leary came in to me, and I can still remember saying, "Have you got gloves?" I thought, like, you know, to have a pair of gloves. I'm not saying that I'm 100 years of age, but have good gloves then, right? He came in to say, for the penalty, he said, "Have you got the proper gloves now? You've got good gloves or something like that, right?" And Barney scored the goal. But I always remember coming off the pitch, Barney Rock saying to me, I seen John going into you, and he was obviously telling you which side he was going to hit, and he hit the opposite side. No, but he wasn't telling me that. Things like that, stories I always remember. You know, always stick in your mind, you know, about things like that, you know.
And I don't know if again Craig might come in on this one as well, but an interesting thing, right? That I suppose, Colin, that you never really hear why, but how did you end up in goals, or how did you end up being a goalkeeper?
Well, I used to play goals in the local soccer club in Glebe North. So I was kind of I was always in goals from such a young age. So again, it was inevitable that they were going to have a look at me in O'Dwyer's as a goalkeeper. And at that stage, right, when you had a county player like John O'Leary playing, he was wasted in the goals. Like we were a Division Two Dublin senior team, so I mean, you were always feeling that you could utilise him better. So that's where I was kind of fast tracked into the goals. And as I said to you, I know I can remember looking back. My debut was against Whitehall Colm Kills, Paul Clark's team at the time, and I was 16 years of age. And when I look back and I said, there was no way that I was ready for that. But that's the way it was done then. Like, I mean, that doesn't happen nowadays. But that's the way it was done. And like great times and great school. And football was very, very honest then. It was very, very committed. And massive crowds just to go to the league matches. And they were kind of occasions nearly. You'd always play on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock and then go for a few pints afterwards and stuff like that. And it was a great way of getting to know everybody and getting to know the two teams used to socialise together. But that, like all that stuff, like that's changed now, you know.
Seems to be like was it a community thing back then? Like I know, like when I went around in the cool camps in different clubs during the year, and you see the pictures on the wall, and you might say, "Oh, there's a league game from here, there, or whatever." But the crowds are massive.
Massive.
Absolutely massive compared to, like, I don't know why it has changed now. Like, I know growing up, I would have seen my grandfather, like, every Sunday, same time, long coat on, flat cap, out walking. He was going to a game somewhere. If there wasn't games allowed, he was going to meet. If there was no club games, he was going to an inter-county game. But it was just a religion to them boys, and they'd hit every pub on the way home, you know. Compared to now, it's not the same.
But that's a very valid point there, Craig, because like at that stage, a lot of people would go county to county to watch games. They would have the local fixtures in the paper, and they'd know if there was a match in Meath or Louth or even, as I said, Dublin. They'd go to see them, you know, and and it was a great way of kind of learning. You know, you're watching all the top players all the time from either counties, and you're picking up their traits, what they have, you know, what makes them special, you know, and I love that. But I have to say, like, funny enough, when I got married in '95 and came down and joined the Blues in '96, and I started playing with the Blues then, and first thing that struck me was the standard of the pitches and everything in Louth was far better than Dublin, because a lot of Dublin pitches are played on council grounds, you know, and I couldn't get over the amount of clubs that had their own pitch, and the football then was brilliant. Like, I mean, I remember we got to the first year I was there, we got the Cardinal down the final playing the Clans, and sure, you had Seamus and Jerry Curran, you know, Stephen White, the Stauntons, and like the standard was incredible, you know, and it was really, like, I mean, I feel like, because the furthest we ever got with Warriors was to the quarterfinals of the championship, and we lost by a point to Sylvester's, who went on to win it that year. But we had in that midfield, we had John O'Leary and Stephen Million that time, the late great Stephen Million, and who were a match for anybody. You know, I think the two of the guys are 28 or 29 at the prime of their game, but the standard of football was incredible. And so, coming down to Louth, like when I started playing with the Blues at that stage, it was nearly a step up playing the likes of Stepanen and the Clans. Like, they were tremendous players, and the battles that we used to have with them teams, like that. Like, I mean, we were kind of Blues were kind of they were only coming then again. Like, I mean, like there was young players coming through like Simon and Brian and fellas of that. And they were only 19 or 20 playing against the likes of them. But I keep looking back at that time and saying it's them games that develop you as players when you're a young fella, playing again your seasoned players, and you know, picking up sort of how they play the game, and what they bring to the game, like their physicality or their skill sets and everything. And you know, some of my friends used to come down from Abrigan to watch the early my first few years there, and they couldn't get over the standards, you know. And at that stage, you just remember, like, Louth were a very competitive team in the Leinster Championships as well, and you know, like, they were very, very unfortunate not to get to certain Leinster finals, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's again, Colm, yeah, really interesting stuff that you're after bringing up there, and again, stuff we're going to dive into a wee bit more. But just moving on to, you know, again, some great insights to your time playing with the Dwyers and in Dublin, and some of the players you played against, and something I was listening to you there, and a word that kept cropping up was learning, or you know, it was a word you kept using, and again, I just wrote it down beside me because I did, you know, I wanted to come back to it. And is that something, you know, obviously as a coach, that you know, us coaches want to learn all the time, no matter what we do, whether it's watching a YouTube program or something on Netflix, or you know, linking into a webinar to watch something. You're always trying to pick up a little nugget here and there. Is that something that was always in the back of your mind, even growing up back then? Were you always looking? Were you always that type of character that wanted to learn from things you've done, whether it be playing senior football at 16 or going to watch Dublin, etc., etc.? Was that something that was always in you?
Yeah, I think now, again, looking back, Carl, I think that, as I said, I've made the point, I think, a couple of times there, when I started at 16, that I wasn't able for it. And I think it came from that, where I was saying, I need to get able for this pretty quickly. So I started absorbing and learning about what I needed to do to sort of get up to that level. And I think it kind of started then. And I remember I was lucky enough to do a presentation in the National Coaching Conference a few years ago. And I came across my first diary that I kept as a coach, and I used to be an usher in the Dáil, and we'd have late nights there on duty in the Dáil, and I used to jot down all the training sessions that we did, you know, and try to get the learnings from it. I was primarily coming first and foremost of me learning as a player, but I was actually beginning my journey as kind of logging everything as a coach as well. So I mean, I've been very much involved in it for years and years, and as I said earlier on, I've changed along the way too. Like my coaching philosophies or styles have completely changed from when it was then too, and are continuing to change as well. That's because, as you mentioned, that like as a coach, you want to learn all the time. You're always, I call it, like again, it's footballizing things. Like you can read any book, right? I mean, I'd be a big music fan, and I'm a big fan of Iron Maiden bands like that. But Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer for Iron Maiden, was a champion fencer, and he got a coach in one day to say to him that you'd be a better fencer if you changed from using your right hand to your left hand, which was incredible. Um, sort of journey he had to go on to completely change from using right bilateral movements to left bilateral movements. But I mean, I remember reading that book and saying, right, I got so much out of that because he used to talk about this thing called about option and protection, that you had to have an option to score and a protection to, protect yourself. So, I mean, you can footballize, you can get everything, any information from anywhere if your mind is open to it, And I think, like so that is like creating a kind of language, a coaching language, helps you kind of get your message across to players as well, And so, I mean, I'd be interested in that sort of development as well. How do you kind of get your message across? How do you have to improve your side? Just like we're all in lockdown after kind of probably enhancing our media skills here in terms of making presentations, Zoom meetings, and things like that. To be had to upskill. So it just shows you that if you have that sort of mindset, you can do it. And I think you need that as a coach.
Yeah, no, definitely. It showed Colm the mindset that you had even at an early age. I think as players as well, and you hear that phrase thrown out that you know people are after they've stopped playing that they're students of the game, that they think about the game the whole time or look to learn from it, and I think that's really important. I think that's really important that as footballers and players that they're constantly looking to be better and looking to try to improve and you know I think that's why a lot of people go into coaching after they stop playing.
You could hear Kieran last week, Carl. No, Kieran McKeever said last week about how he was improving as he was saying, he was a cornerback or something, that he'd go and he'd study or he'd ask for snippets of information off his coaches about the movement of the players he was playing against, who they link up with. Like, I think majority of players nowadays will do that. Like even I remember Colm last year, maybe 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. Emma Carolan took a penalty in Castle Bellingham and put a top right corner. And then we played them then in the final that year and penalty again. And I knew in my head, like I had it on video. I actually stupidly recorded the video. I was thinking like no one could see me with a camera phone recording the Blues penalty, But I think majority of players will try and watch people in the same position or people that could potentially come up against and try and get the edge on them.
There's an awful lot of talk out there about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? And I think a lot of there's a lot of good coaching going on at the minute where they're creating environments where they're encouraging growth amongst players and coaches, right? And like I try to simplify it by saying that you need to get value out of everything you do, right? So if you're reading a book, it has to add value if you're going down that line of kind of picking up some information. If you're a player, right, you have to have value, right? What there of stuff you do individually and stuff you do collectively. But what it really is, what you're talking about there with Emmett and yourself and your progress, is called the hierarchy of value. So what it means with this is, like I'm sure Kieran McKeever was speaking about, right, what attributes he needs to mark this player. Okay, but Kieran's hierarchy of value, I'd imagine, is he's mastered his footwork. Now he has to master his handling, his handwork, his tackling, right? So there are your different values or stages. So as you kind of add value to your game, right, another thing becomes more important, another thing becomes more important, and that's the continuous learning. That's the growth mindset that you're looking to add to your game. But you have what's called the hierarchy of value, and what's going to add make me better. Like I mean, I remember Bevan Duffy put a post up there. They reminded me about like we used to use tennis balls when we were, or small balls when we were training with loud, right? And the whole idea behind it was to try to stop, use your hands properly without pulling the jersey, getting your hands in position, things like that. Look, they were off the wall things, but it got players thinking about, so if you mastered your hands in a certain position from behind a man, or the side of a man, or in front of the man, that's a value. So now you move on to another one after that. What am I going to get value footwork, if that makes any sense. So again, that's the players continue to evolve, has to have a hierarchy of value, kind of, if you get me, of, you know, improve all the time.
We use that as well, Colm. I don't know whether you can remember it, probably a while ago now, but my kicking went a bit astray when you were coaching me with Loud. And I think it was I can't remember exactly why, but you had a reason why it was going astray. I think it was my stand-up was maybe too close to the ball or something like that. And I couldn't take that information on board and then relay it when I was going to do the kick out because I kept making a mistake and then my head just wasn't in a good position to fix the problem. And you gave me the stress ball in my hand, and this is even in training I was squeezing it to remind myself not to keep making the same mistakes, so don't put your foot so close to the ball. And eventually, like, it could have been something simple, but it worked and I got myself back and I stopped making the same mistake.
They're triggers, right? And myself and Colin talked about this a while back. Like, I mean, like that year when we got to promote to Division 2, like, with all due respect to everybody right now, like Air Force 5 league matches, your kickouts were amazing, right? And we reckon we got promoted in the Air Force 5 league matches because the opposition couldn't decipher the kickout strategy that we had. Now look, again, as seasons progressed, more data is accumulated. Teams kind of cop on to what other teams are kind of doing. But certainly that year, when the first 5 matches that we played was incredible, like in terms of our kickouts and our kickout strategies. I don't know if you can remember that, but we've often chatted about that and saying, like, that was really kind of top class that time.
And I think it was probably caught on camera the leash game we played that year where, like, we were going short, they try and close you in, then we go long, and it was just like, it just worked, and we got so many scores off, and I probably got a bit of recognition, but like a lot of stuff I was doing, anyone could do. It was like, as a team, it was the best I've ever been part of as a team unit. Everybody to understand, everybody be comfortable, everybody wants the ball, and when we got the ball, we knew where we were going. And as you said, teams couldn't stop us whether we went short or long.
Yeah, it was great times.
Yeah, no doubt, lads. And look, again, Colm, I'm gonna reel it back a small bit, and again, I suppose that's where I wanted to go. I wanted, if we speak about something, I wanted to filter into something else and go on, and which is brilliant. And again, you've been very good so far. But I want to bring it back that you mentioned earlier on about you got transferred to the Blues, to the Newtown Blues and Drogheda in '96.
Yeah.
And firstly, how did that transfer come about? And secondly, what was, again, I want you to go into a wee bit more about you mentioned the clans in Savannah, and we know that those two teams have been very prominent in the '90s in lead football, and what was it like to play against that group of players? Because I know, obviously, I'm a Clonagale club and myself. I know the quality of footballer that we had back then. I think there was about 8 or 9 of them on the live panel. And I'll have to mention Niall Donnelly. Won't be happy if he's listening. You didn't mention him earlier. I'll have to mention Bubu. But again, so how did that transfer come about in '96? And again, what was I want you to just go into a wee bit more about the quality of footballer that was there back then.
Well, the transfer was very simple because when I moved into where I live now, at the minute, 2 doors up was the Newtown Blues current manager at the time, Martin Carr. So we became friends. We travelled to work together. But I continued playing with Udvars for a year. But although it was only up to Balbriggan, but I mean, every second week you're in the city centre, you're in Tala, you're somewhere. So every match became an away match for me, and it was just a natural thing to do. You thought you could keep it going, but you kind of got fed up, sort of travelling and doing all that sort of stuff. So it made sense to move to the local club. Now I have to admit, I didn't know an awful lot about level football when I joined. I didn't know anything about the Blues and about the history or traditions that they have. So it was kind of a happy fix. They needed a goalkeeper and I needed a club. So that's how that came about. It was kind of straightforward. But as I said to you, when I didn't know at the time, but like, their fortunes had changed a little there. They weren't kind of the dominant team that they were from the even to the late 80s. So they were kind of going through a little bit of a barren stage. Some good players there. You had the judges, Eugene, Bosco, Peter. You got Colin Kelly, obviously. Joe Stafford, who was in there playing. Joe was a previous Meath minor. Lots of good players. But so Martin was the manager there, and he asked me to join. And so things started to improve a little bit. And the team kind of got a little bit better. A lot of young lads, an injection of young lads. I mentioned Simon Gerrard, Brian Phillips, Ronan Phillips, Martin Phillips. All the lads started coming through together, and it was really, really a good time. And we became close friends, and that really aided that team. But to go to what you were mentioning about, at that time, the two big teams was the Bannon and Parnells and Clan the Gales. And the thing that struck my mind there about is I mentioned to you there that there are two big teams, but there were big teams in size as well. They were incredible. Like, I mean, you had, like, as you said, you had Seamus brother, I think Kevin was in the middle of the field. You had the Staunton, you had Niall and goals, you had Jerry Curran, right? Then you had Ken Rooney, Ken Riley, David Riley. You had John Pendergast, who used to play full forward for Savannah, he's a Dublin man himself. But 6'4" and 6'5", massive teams. And them two teams were the teams that were always competing for the championships. And we were like the kind of spoiled brats coming up along them. And like the difference between the Blues at that stage and them two teams was we were a smaller team and kind of probably a little bit quicker and faster as such. So they were probably coming to the end of their cycle, and we were coming to the start of theirs. But like the Clans had brilliant. Like you mentioned Niall O'Donnell. Like Niall and I are good friends, because we kind of played a couple of years together with Loud. But he had an incredible kick out. Like the boys, he put the ball on you from a distance. He could put the ball right to where you were going to be. They had a great telepathic communication with the Clans. I can remember the Clans used to have an early kick out where they'd cross each other, and the two guys just simply run across each other, and Niall would be able to find either one of them, nearly on the opposition's 45. So they did a lot of kind of that sort of stuff, and that came from playing together for so long.
Would there have been routines back then, Colm, in the club football in the 90s? A routine for kickouts?
Sorry?
Would there have been routines for kickouts back then?
Yeah. Now look, at that stage, you took the if it was a wide, you took it from the 14. If it was a score, you took it from the 21, I think, right? So you would have kind of different set pieces, not to the degree that they're there today. So what Niall had a tremendous kind of trajectory in the ball, where it didn't go too high, do you know that way? Where it could just go sort of, it wouldn't be coming down with out of the clouds. So it was great ball for the midfielders to attack, and sure they had some of the best guys fielding at that stage. So if he could put it in certain areas, and
who would have been midfield with the Blues? Was it Kelly? Was it Paul?
Paul Kelly was there, right? And sometimes Colin used to play in the middle. So it was predominantly Paul and Damien Martin. Webs Martin would be playing in the middle there. And again, great fielders of the ball. They were, but Damien wouldn't have the size of them guys, but he'd be very, very smart footballer.
Would you get the grief that I would say, for I get now grief, like if a kick out isn't dropped on a lad's finger, you'd be hearing the likes of Tommy roaring back, come on, would you have been getting grief back then?
No, it wasn't really. It wasn't, but you would get more grief for going short then, because the short kickers weren't really encouraged. Everything wanted to just put out there to compete on, and put long for them to fight with. So what you were talking about really was that type of movement where they cross each other, or a ball put out to the wing for fellas to run onto. There wasn't a lot of strategy in it. Like I even go back to John O'Leary. Remember, John used to sometimes purposely slice the ball with his right foot, and he'd slice it that it would kind of go out to his right, which would be the left 45, really, and that was kind of a bit of a strategy from their kickouts. I remember years ago him telling me about that especially from the 14, when he's kicking from the 14, slice it on purpose towards the pitch,
Yeah, I remember growing up, like I would have went to watch all the games, like in the 90s with my father and my uncle playing. Like what Barry Murphy used to be in goals for us. Barry used to have like these rugby boots, and the studs used to be like full metal studs, like
that's what we wore, yeah.
Yeah, and it was mentally watched. I can still remember, like, and he would nearly spend 30 seconds towing the pitch, so the ball would be up in a nice side. And Jesus, could he drive the ball down the field? Like, it was really impressive. He could probably still kick it further now than I can, like off the cone.
Yeah, but that, as I said, that was the kind of the strategy then, as such. People were you were putting it out there as far as you can, and letting you. Every team had kind of, even our own team. You had James in the middle, James McDonald, and you had great fielders in the middle. So it was put out there for them to compete.
And just even on that, it's probably nearly, maybe I could be wrong in saying this, but it's nearly come back to that stage of longer kickouts and hitting pockets wide right and wide left. Because first of all, teams now, I've noticed, like even in club level now, there's a press on a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, that's it.
Than there ever was before. So it's nearly like someone asked me a question after this year's final, like, why did I not go short? And I was kind of saying, like, well, it's a risk and reward, isn't it? You have to understand whether you should do it and shouldn't do it, and like it's just as positive to kick the ball down the field if you've men that's going to be able to do stuff with it as it is to be going short,
I think it's important nowadays, like that you can mix your kickouts up, and also I think what's important is that the venue comes into play a lot. If you're playing, like for instance, like I think a lot of goalkeepers get too much of a hard time really now. You play Crow Park and then you play, let's say, Drogheda or playing the pitch, right? There's could be 10 yards in the difference of a kick out simply because of the pitch. Now, the keeper's done nothing wrong or hasn't done anything different, or his kick out's still the same, but because the dimensions of the pitch has changed, a long kick out now becomes just an average kick out if you're changing pitch.
Yeah.
And so all them things has to be factored in, your opposition, the weather, all that sort of stuff. And that's the detail teams have gone into now. So you're quite well aware that if you're playing in Donegal, that Sean Patton can kick the ball X, Y, and Z. So again, if you press the ball, you know that we're 9 times out of 10 he's going to use this type of kick out, that sort of stuff. So it's about trying to be one step ahead of your opponent, but they're also trying to do that as well, really.
Yeah, no, it is. It's ever changing. It really is ever changing. And I know, like we had Martin Morgan, would have been loud, great, and Monster Voice, great. He when he was selected with us, he'd always before a game, you'd see him stepping out the width of the field, and he'd come over and tell me. Now, for years, I probably just went over my head. I didn't really listen because I presume, like as I remember saying, I said at the Peach Caliph one day, I said, Jesus, that 45 looks further out. And he goes, well, it's still 45 metres out, Craig, and I kind of go, like, yeah, well, I suppose all GA pitches should be the same size with the measurements, but they're not. And Martin obviously being the experienced man he was, he'd always step it out and he'd come back and say, well, it's 2 metres wider on that side than it is on that side. And I suppose it's something that I started to maybe look at a little bit more when I've times, especially with loud games when you're there that little bit earlier and you go out and you walk the pitch, like, because the New Park Weave pitch is wider on one side than it is on the other.
Well, see, they're the little things that kind of experience gives you, because there it all comes down to little inches at the minute, and 2 meters can make a big difference of a ball staying in or going over the sideline. So it's important to know that sort of stuff. But even the language people use with goalkeepers saying that this keeper's a great kicker, he's a 70-yard kicker. It's not 70 yards, right? He's kicking from the ball from the 20-yard line, right? He probably has a 55 kick out, but it's landing on the opposition's, that sort of stuff, landed beyond that. So, it's about, just creating that sort of proper visual in your head of your kicks. And like if teams analyze each other's kickouts, even club teams now have gone down to very, very much, they're saying the first half is a breeze there. That's going to take 10 yards off his kickouts. And so, our starting position will be, will change because of that. Like a lot of teams talk about that, as you well know, like they'd all kind of have scrutinized strengths and weaknesses or perceived weaknesses of other goalkeepers.
Yeah. Question, Colm, that I was talking to you yesterday about would it be. A lot of people might know. They might know, obviously, that you were with the Blues and Mead and that. Like, but there's something that, like, I suppose local coaches know, but probably the outside people might not know. Is you would have took a Blues team from nursery the whole way up to senior level, and this team, for anyone that's listening that don't know, this team would have won more or less every competition the whole way up from, we'll say, whatever it was, 12 or 14, the whole way up to the adult level to senior championships. But the impressive thing for me with this group of lads, and I know a lot of them, I still play with a lot of them, would be how many of them went on to play inter-county level. There's probably 6 or 7 of them that went on to play inter-county level, and there's probably in between 12 and 18 of them involved with a senior club championship winning team. This doesn't happen that often. This is the only only time I've ever seen it happen. I've seen teams come through and be successful, and maybe 2 or 3 players come out of that, or 4 or 5 players come out of that, say, of the club, and maybe 1 or 2 of them go on and play inter-county level. But to have 5 to 7 of them playing inter-county level, and I'm telling you, all these boys are really good footballers, be it a top class full forward or top class full back. These boys are good footballers, you know. And I just want to touch on that journey through with these boys and see, can I pick your brain on any potential issues that you might have had bringing these lads through, or positives, like the stuff that you'd like to let people know, that stuff that went well for you.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, Craig, and delighted that you brought it up because, like I mentioned a few times, like we're a community-based organisation, the GAA, and we depend on fathers and mothers and whatever to get involved, and that's how the show keeps rolling. You know, if we didn't have reluctant or volunteer coaches via parents to get involved. So I mean, like that, I went down the same route as numerous people, and wanted to give something back. Had a great time playing with the Blues and learning loads from people. And I said, look, it's my time to give something back. And again, I was developing as a coach as well. So I went down and kind of got involved when kind of my own son Ross was involved, and they were about 7 years of age or 8 years of age. So as I mentioned before, like it's the Forrest Gump saying, like you have a box of chocolates in front of you there. You don't know what you're going to get. Like there's no way you could perceive that these guys are going to win championships at any age or anything like that. And that's not the reason you were involved. You were the reason involved to give something back. But I look back on that time now with great fondness, and I look back at some of the things we did, and we didn't follow any sort of structure or anything, but we wanted to make them feel that they were part of something special. And I think that's one of the first things that kind of I would always take from it looking back. We wanted to make them feel that they were part of something special, and things like getting them gear, right? Having fun days out. We bring them every year to Crow Park to watch Louth play, or we bring them on a match on a bus. We video one match a year so we could progress their chart of traveling, right? We play football every match. We didn't do an awful lot of technical work in terms of lines and drills and stuff like that. We would do some of that because you have to do some of that, but we would play games every day in training. Now, when you've got 8-year-olds playing games, it's going to be kind of a different type of game than they're going to play when they're 12. But the learning was taking place there, and we got a good crew of coaches there helping us. Again, what I would be doing there is kind of spotting dads and moms there, and they're getting involved, getting them all involved. So it kind of came a huge collaboration between a lot of people. But because of making them feel special and part of something, they kept coming. And they kept coming through the gates, and that was the massive thing. Now, one of the other things that we kind of do, this is my own personal kind of gripe, but I felt there wasn't enough football for them. So I would kind of seek games in other counties. We'd enter them in tournaments. We'd be playing kind of every year. We play Colm Kills. We play Fingal Ravens. We play teams like that. Every year we play, say, an extra 4 to 5 challenge matches during the summer, and that really helped bond them too. So it kind of morphed into sort of, we end up taking 3 age groups together as they got a little bit older. So you know, and that made things kind of a little bit better then, because we had massive numbers in training. At some stages there, we'd have been 36 training, and that would be across 3 groups. This was especially when you had about 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and 14-year-olds. And we purposely kept them all together because the numbers allowed that. So we kind of throw our ideas in together. And as you said there, they turned out to be very, very successful. Like some of the things that I can think back at is even from a young age, like we qualified for the Féile, and that was the old style Féile, where only one team represented your county, and you were put in divisions. And we got to the Division 3 All Ireland final and lost. And I know the boys still talk about that; they were devastated. Then another time, we got to the Leinster Minor Club final, and we were beaten by an Offaly team there in the final of that. But they were kind of things that kind of said to these players, not us, we didn't say this, but said to the players, you know something, we are good. We are. They got great sort of, how would you put it, encouragement from that. They were competing outside their own county. But I also mentioned there that along the way, right, we were pushed very hard by Monster Boys, by St. Mary's of RD, and a couple of other teams. But for a team to be successful, you need other teams to be successful as well in terms of pushing them, you know. And at that stage there were some great teams, great competitions, and there was never much in between a lot of these matches. There was a couple of points here and there, and we got to 3 consecutive minor finals, losing our third one too, monster boys. And I can always remember saying to the fellas, look, it's all right to lose once you don't lose your hunger, you know. And that match kind of taught them that they were kind of, Jesus, you know something, we're not there yet, you know. But they great journeys, we great times with them, and as you said, a lot of them came through. But I think what we did was we faced the same problems as a lot of other teams, as other codes, soccer and rugby and basketball. And what we always did was we never put pressure on kids to play. We never made them make a choice. We always said to them, we'll be here for you, you know, and we always included them. And as I said, when I often think back, an awful lot of those guys that were kind of going down other sports routes are back playing with us now. And they're there. And I think that's a lot to do with that. We never put pressure on them to make a choice. We always said we'd be here for you when you wanted to come back and stuff like that. And I think that kind of helped them all and to kind of stay involved.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it's everything at practice what you preach, isn't it? It's everything we're trying to do at the minute. Every coach and every club is you're trying to create that fun environment, and you're trying to make it like you were speaking about camaraderie there with the lads come through, and like anyone that knows these lads will know that's not a fake made up word that you just said there. Like it's the truth. Like there is a camaraderie with them boys, and clearly it started at a very young age, and it is massively important for any club coach to try and develop that fun environment. That obviously development comes second to actually winning. You know, like once you have that development and the camaraderie and the team environment, I suppose.
I do, Craig. I do. Like again, I'm not going to sort of sit here and sort of take the high ground. And when you get to a final, it's very hard to control your ego, so you want to win it, right? And again, I like to make the point, because at 7 or 8 years of age, you don't know if they're going to get to the final, so you're not in it for that reason. So it's very hard. You should have to remind yourself, try not to change. But it's all about development. Like I was reading up, getting ready for today, right? And I'm just looking back this week, and we take the Leinster under 20 competition, stroke 21 competition, right? Dublin have won 8 of the last 10 of them, I think. Or no, since 2000 and since 2010 they've won 8 Lancers, right? But yet they've only won, I think, 1 minor. So there's a clear sense there that they are more interested in development up to about 17 years or 18 years of age. And then from then on, they change their tack in terms, and they go for competition and winning. You know, but certainly, like you would know this, and probably Carl would know this. Like, I mean, I done it when I was involved in the Louth development squad, bringing teams up and down to play blitzes. Dublin always had split teams. They always had numerous teams. Right, they're more interested in development, and it's kind of to me that proves that, right? You know, like I mean, I know like from talking to Kildare coaches and Meath coaches, they would beat them up to minor, and then 2-3 years later when they're playing them, it's like a different team.
Yeah, no, I suppose it's an ongoing, it's an ongoing. I won't say issue, but it is something that comes up and rears its head a lot with club coaches. That everybody has an ego, and everybody does want to win, and it is very hard to park that. But as a club, the clear message coming from your club and your coaching officer and your coaches should be that it's development. It's development the whole way through. And once you have your development right, it should go hand in hand with winning. But you can't sacrifice, I suppose, development to win. Basically, you can't just like I go back to your scenario. Like Ross on his own would have been enough to beat anyone. Do you know what I mean? He was that talented, that skillful that you come up against him. You could put 5 players on him, and you still wouldn't stop him. You know, but it, what's impressive, I say, from your team coming through, it wasn't just Ross to come through, and it wasn't just the stronger players that come through that made it into county. It's your whole Blues team right now. Senior team is littered with players from that team, and they're all the likes of Jamie Kelly, Ian Connor, Alan Connor. These lads are fantastic footballers, and I'm sure like you have a scenario back then where a player mightn't have been too strong back then. Do you know what I mean? But they weren't ignored. They were brought along in the process, and they did come along to be great footballers in the end.
And don't get us wrong, Craig. Like, we made mistakes too. Like, I mean, I often look back there now and kind of saying, well, I probably got that wrong or this wrong there. But it was a journey, right? And everything was done with the view of kind of getting as many of them through, right, to be part of something that they'd enjoy and give them something that, to make them feel part of. And I think, like, you're always going to have natural drop off. Players like will kind of realize themselves, yeah, look, it's not for me, or I'm not prepared to give that commitment, and that's fair enough. You can't be. You have to remember what we are like. We're that community-based organisation. We're meant to be providing kind of a social outlet, as well as a kind of learning and the development of it. But if it's not for you, it's not for you, right? But if you have that kind of policy where players can feel, look, all my friends are there, I like being down there, and that is just as much success as winning championships.
Yeah, and it's a classic case. I'm just thinking there when you were talking was Kieran Clusky Kelly.
Yeah.
Went away, played soccer for Jordan United for years. Great soccer player. He's now back in the middle of the field now for the Blues. At what age is he's probably 23, is he?
23, 24, yeah. And
You know,
look, he great kid, and he's looking forward to kind of making his bit of history with the Blues now. And like I said, the boys are only delighted to have him back there, and he's a lot to offer.
yeah, and that all comes down to, I suppose, culture in the club and club philosophy and all the things we preach, but it's very hard to put in place, and it's not something that can be done overnight. It's a
Mm-hmm.
building blocks, isn't it?
It is, right, and again, like you'll be aware of kind of the traditions within your club, right, and that stands for an awful lot. And they want to make their own traditions. They want to make their own bits of history there as well. And they did win their 3 championships in a row, and the boys contributed heavily to that. And they've a legacy. Not that legacy is important, but like they have their own legacy now as such.
Colm, yeah, great insight there with the underage setup in the Blues and what you've done there, and again, really interesting to see that every coach starts somewhere as well, and has that affection with the club. So that was a brilliant insight. But I suppose before we wrap up, just something that I was personally interested in, and maybe some of the guys listening out there might be interested in was part of your club coaching. I know you spent time with the Martins, Blues, Castleknock, but Colm Kills for me is what stands out. I remember watching the game fondly, that All Ireland final against Westport. I remember sitting at home watching it. I didn't get out to the game, so I remember sitting at home watching it and cheering for the Colm Kills, because one of our own was managing them, and agonizing one point defeat. But we'll come back to that. But just firstly, what was the secret behind that run? That All Ireland, I suppose, series and the Meath Championship, the Leinster, right into the All Ireland. What was the secret behind? Obviously good coaching, and that's the obvious question. Oh, sorry, that's one of the obvious answers, but I think as well as I do that it takes more than just good coaching to be successful with a team.
Yeah, again, Carol, it's a good question about they're a brilliant club, the Colm Kills, and like they're a massive club, really good underage structures, a good always produce quality players, but for some reason they just weren't getting over the line in regards to the intermediate championship. So I suppose it was a little bit of timing that played into everyone's hands. But look, every club or player, even, like, they should have a North Star as such. So, it always asks people, and what is your North Star? What are you aiming for? And they were aiming for an intermediate. They wanted to become a senior club, and they were hell bent on coming to that. Now, they felt over the previous years, before I was there, they were getting closer and closer. So that was their North Star. So I suppose when I went in really there, it was really just to help them, guide them along the lines there. And again, like, no mad secret. My whole thing is trying to create something that's kind of special and that people feel part of it. So I would never segregate first team from second team. I don't believe in that. I would train everybody. Sometimes that's to your own detriment. You could end up having 40 at a training session. Mm-hmm. But I do believe clubs, especially, really, that's what kind of makes a club special, when you bring everyone together. So when I look back on that journey, we had to, the day actually, we lost the third Blues minor final. And when we got to 3 minor finals, Niamh Martin beat us in the third one, stopped us doing 3 in a row. I had to run off to Park Talton, where Colm Kills are playing Walterstown in the semi-final, and we drew that match. And I just remember thinking for a few minutes, this is going to be one of the hardest days I ever had as a coach, losing the minor final now and possibly losing the intermediate semi-final, only for James Conlon popped up with a really, really first-class point from a massive angle to get us a replay, which we won. We won in extra time, and then we got through and won the intermediate final. But that was their North Star, as I said. So I suppose what really happened when we got there, right? It was such a relief of winning that championship that there was a great feeling of goodwill and enjoyment, and everybody, when you go into Leinster campaigns, I've done them with the Blues and various other clubs, and that it's a bit of a kind of a mixed bag. You don't know what to expect. But you can always sense from the first couple of nights back training after winning the championship. And all these lads were mad keen. They were there every man. They were kind of putting other things like holidays and stuff like that on hold to see what they could do. So we went down to play the Wicklow champions. I just came back from holidays for that one. And we got over that. Ben Brennan picked up a head injury that ruled him out the next match, which was against Round Towers in Kildare. And then beating Rosemount in Park Talton, where Graham Riley scored and was fouled the last minute of the game to win a key point, winning just the Leinster Championship. But this thing just became like how would you put it, huge momentum. And they felt, see, there's a perception out there, right? A senior team in Louth, Meath, Dublin are a senior team. They'll compete against each other. Same way with an intermediate team. Top intermediate teams will compete against the top intermediate teams in any county. And it's trying to get teams to believe that. Like, if you look at even all the mock tests, all the teams that come out of Louth wins in the intermediate championship. It's the same like with senior, although we haven't had great success in terms of the Blues, but you're playing teams like Bolton Glass and from Wicklow and stuff like that are just as good as every team. The top senior teams can compete with each other. So it was getting the Colm Kills to believe that you're not playing anybody that has an extra leg or an extra hand. You're playing similar type footballers to you. Now, we went on then to play Pomeroy Plunkets from Tyrone in the semi-final, who was managed by Mickey Hart's son, actually. And Mickey Hart was at the game. He was a keen observer. And I remember him saying to his son that he's won the game, or he's lost the game, then he's won the game, then he's lost the game again. That's how the game ebbed and flowed so much. And again, we had great performances there from Niall Ronan and, again, James Conlon. And like, the momentum was huge. But when we got to the final, right, it was just brilliant. There was 9,000 people at the match. There was a surreal atmosphere at it because you knew you were on the cusp of something special, but we didn't start well. So I don't know whether it was a case of, we were kind of a little bit overawed by the occasion or not, and like a few things didn't go to plan. But then, slowly but surely, we got an odd decision where the goalkeeper was sent off, and the Westport's goalkeeper was sent off, and we got a penalty. And before we know it, we're back in the game, and all the momentum was with us. Last chance to equalise, and I really feel that if we had got the equalising point there, we may have gone on to snatch the whole thing. But to answer your question, really, it was just once they reached the North Star, which was winning the Meath Intermediate Championship, there was huge momentum, and then once we got the belief that, look, we're as good as anybody we're going to face in the remainder of this competition, right? And by winning one or two matches, that belief just crept through the team. And it was a huge momentum. And do you know something? Every training session, every game was just brilliant. Great fun, great. Everybody wanted to be with each other. Great atmosphere. Like, we embraced it completely. Got a tour of Croke Park previous, about the week before, to see what we were going to face, where we're going to tug out. We prepared like a professional team as much as possible. We really, really had a great time and great memories from that occasion.
Yeah, and again, just bringing it back to that, the word that sticks to me there while you were speaking, and it's momentum, and I think you get that. You get those. I think the phrase winning is a habit. Is used a lot, and I think when you have that momentum going, it's very, very hard to stop. You look at the likes of Liverpool, even in soccer, and over the last few seasons, not going too well now, but they had that momentum that was very hard to break, that team spirit once it's built, and it was a special run, I'm sure, for you.
Well, momentum and belief is to me is very closely aligned, and like so when you kind of start believing in yourself, and that's massive in Gaelic football. That's I see that now every day, be it with Blues underage kids, Meath senior footballers, whatever. When the belief is there, it's a powerful tool and it generates your momentum, if you get me right. And again, by getting a few close wins or getting, things start kind of falling into place, and you begin to talk to yourself and say, listen, you know what? I am able to play there. We are a good team and stuff like that. And that's very, very powerful. And that's hard to coach. And it'd be brilliant to bottle it when you get it. And there's times, I'm sure if you even think of your careers and that, Carl, there's times when you have it, right, and everything's going great and you're flying and you're on top of the ground, you're in your flow state, all that sort of stuff. And that's when you have to kind of that's when great opportunity to learn and develop as a footballer. Like, for instance, I think back in that match there, and again, it's 4 or 5 years ago now, and Lee Keegan and Graham Riley were marking each other. And if you really go back and look at that game, like Graham kicked 3 points off him from play. Lee Keegan possibly should have been sent off in that match because he couldn't cope with Graham. He was pulling him and he was dragging him. And I just remember saying afterwards, there's 2 players at their prime, right, representing their clubs. Like, that's GA at his best. But I mean, for Graham, right, what he could take out of that was, look, he's competing against a serial all-star winner, a guy that competes in All-Ireland finals, and he's every bit as good as him. Now, it's okay me telling a player that, but to actually know I've got facts to back that up. And that stuff is very, very important for players to see and to get confidence from.
Yeah, no doubt, and I suppose just before I let you go, Colm, I think as well, I personally I've never heard you been asked this question publicly. We spoke about it was a very, very narrow defeat. It was a 1 point defeat in an All Ireland final. How did that feel personally? Does that is there still days you wake up and think about it? As a coach, that I should have done X, Y, and Z differently. Yeah. Does it live with you like that?
Yeah, you'd always think about that, but I'd always be, believe it or not, like it's all about the players for me, right? And they were devastated, right? Like they know, like, I mean, right? They're not stupid. They were thinking, right, we're senior now. We might never get back here again, right? So I mean, I was devastated for them, okay, seeing the effort. But when we kind of dug deep into the whole thing, as I said to you, right, their goal was to win the intermediate championship. We won that. In Meath, and then everything was a bonus. And I suppose we could refer back to that and we're saying, listen, lads, nobody expected that we'd be kind of lining out in Croke Park on the 9th of February, right, as in an All-Ireland final. So we could cling to that. Yeah, look, I have a belief in football that if you win by 3 points or lose by 3 points, you can nearly trace that back to incidents in the game. So anything more than that you can nearly say a team is better than you, if you get me. So there's kind of a couple of things there where you're saying, Jesus, the ball didn't bounce for us here, or maybe we should have made that decision earlier. But that's football, and you're going to make mistakes. And I think if you create an environment where everybody can accept mistakes, that you learn from your mistakes. Like, mistakes are good, because if you don't make mistakes, there's no learning in them, and you can't look back. We all make mistakes, and if they're accepted or acknowledged, and you move on. So I think that to answer the question there, yeah, I was gutted for the players and for the club and stuff like that. Like, but I mean, I still think that the season held out far more sort of positive and good memories than that. So that's how we kind of try to process the defeat.
Yeah. We turn a negative into a positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose, are we going to bring up the time that I nearly went blind?
Yeah, I was just talking about that there the other day. So we're out. I suppose, like, from a coaching point of view, it's a good story to tell about stuff that that happens that they don't teach in coaching courses, right? And it was a day that we were doing some goalkeeping coaching with yourself, and was it Joe Flanagan, was it, as well?
Yeah.
And we were trying to work on goalkeepers making their body as big as possible and making saves with every part of your body. And so the object of the exercise was for you as the keepers to face quick fire close range shots. But in order for us to get it really well, we used a lot of soccer balls, because the flight of the balls, and we were kicking them at our feet. But you, if my memory serves me right, you took 2 balls to your face, and your sight went. for a couple of minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah. I remember it was a Sunday morning. It was, I don't think it was wonderful weather now. I can't remember exactly what time of the year it was, but I remember taking the first one in the eye, and you're trying to tell yourself you're grand, everything's fine, get ready for the next one. The next one came along, and I took it exact same spot, right in the right eye. And I remember taking myself when I was getting up, I was going, oh Jesus, I can't see out my right eye. I actually couldn't see a thing. It was just black. And I remember saying to you, yeah, Colm, I can't see out of my eye. And I was freaking out. I didn't know whether to go into the physio. I didn't know what to do. All I know was that I couldn't see out my eye. Some laughs, some stories, some
But
great times as well,
that shows you too. That's coaching in a nutshell. When we sit down to design a session and trying to come up with something that you think will aid you and your development, you never expect that you're going to put a player at risk that he mightn't be able to see or anything like that.
Yeah.
So again, nothing goes in a straight line.
No, Jesus, I honestly, for a couple of minutes there, I was scared, and I can't even remember what was the next morning. Like I got a lot of the sight back that in a couple of minutes afterwards, but it was the next day when I finally got the whole lot back. I remember you text me saying, "How are you today?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm actually not too bad." But I remember another good one as well was I don't know whether you remember this was I don't remember why actually, but could have been the junior team back in 2010 maybe. Fairly cheeky come up. It was in the O'Reillys, and it was the I call it the
I remember.
trampoline. Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think Fergal was only a minor at the time. Fergal's a fantastic goalkeeper. He's really sharp, really, really top class soccer style goalie. And we were saying to him that we basically were touching the post, you turn, and you take the trampoline ball, and you just basically put your hands up, and you make the save. But I don't know what he was thinking, but he turned around and he touched the post and he turned around and I don't know whether he forgot to put his hands up or what, and it hit him straight in the nose, and blood came out of his nose. And I think it was a good few years before Fergal came back in the Loud jersey, because he didn't turn up after that game for some reason. I don't know why, but he'll tell you that himself. But
Yeah, I do remember that actually, but I actually think I remember you saying to me that this ball's going to come at you pretty quickly now. I don't think he expected it. But look, as I said to you, that illustrates clearly like that best laid plans and all that sort of stuff. Nothing goes in a straight line.
yeah.
Colm, thanks a million. I really appreciate you giving up your time and fair play to you for coming on and having a chat with us.
And the
best of luck with.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, no. So like, hopefully we get a few listeners anyway, and people get a bit of entertainment out of it for sure. Maybe with some of the great guests that, including yourself, that hopefully we'll have on that. People might take one or two pieces of learning from something that might crop up in a conversation.
I see you actually before we go, you got in another batch of your coaching manual.
Yeah, kind of incredible. I kind of very humbled by its success. It's gone over now 3,000 copies sold, and even now there hasn't been a lot of coaching in the last few months, and it's still kind of interesting. So I'm only kind of responded to the to the interest, and the interest is still there in it. There's still copies there left if anybody wants to get it.
Yeah, and the best way to get it off is from the Instagram, is it?
Or go onto any of the socials and you'll see the email address there, and it's just Colm Nally trainingmanual@gmail.com. And we'll respond to you and get it out as quick as possible.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Colm, for your time.
Right.
And I'll see you again soon down the line.
Right, thanks, Emil.
Thanks, Colm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to the Carl O'Connor podcast with Craig Lynch. Don't forget to like our social media pages on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, don't be afraid to share with your friends.